Okay, let's have your hands and eyes at the smartboard. Let's talk about today's agenda. We need to review what we talked about yesterday with non-renewable energy, and then we're going to start talking about renewable energy, solar and wind energy more specifically today. And then Mr. Hawkins will play a few different video clips so that way you have a better idea about how solar energy is made and how wind turbines work, and also uh, you can see some places where they're actually using wind turbines and solar energy in the real world. So that way you have a perspective on how that's being used. So let's go ahead and get out our guided notes. You should get those out of your classroom folders from yesterday. So go ahead and get those out right now. And you should have something to write with. So go ahead and get out your guided notes from yesterday and something to write with. Okay, so once you have everything ready to go, should be sitting up straight, ready to learn. Let's talk a little bit more about non-renewable energies. So yesterday we talked about how non-renewable energies was a natural resource that's not replaced in a useful time frame. So it takes so long for it to replenish itself that it's not really going to be useful for you because it takes so many years for it to be able to make the coal or to make the oil to get it to where we need it to be used as an energy. And we talked about there's three different types of fossil fuels. So coal, oil, and natural gas were those three types of fossil fuels. We talked about how coal had to be mined for it to be able to use it to produce energy. And we also said that coal was made from plant remains. And we saw that diagram yesterday, how it was made from plant remains, how it then went and decomposed, plant material decomposed, turned into peat, and then it eventually turned into coal as it was compressed. So here's our diagram from yesterday. Here's your decomposing plant matter. And over time, it piled up and formed what's called peat, P-E-A-T, peat. And then eventually that sediment, the layers of rock, compact that peat and turn it into the coal, which is what is mined. So we talked about coal. We talked about, we talked about oil and how oil is also formed from the remains of small animals, algae, and other organisms that lived many, many millions of years ago. And then that petroleum is another name for oil, and that it powers at least 1/3 of the energy that's produced in the world, used for cars, airplanes, trains, and ships. And we also talked about how they get oil, and that the oil deposits are located underground in tiny holes in sandstone or in limestone. That oil is kind of soaked up in that porous rock like a sponge, and it has to be drilled and then pumped out of the ground. And that first type of oil that's pumped out of the ground is called crude oil, and that it goes into a refinery, and at the refinery that crude oil is then heated and is separated into different fuels and other products. And we talked about um, how at the different temperatures you're making different products like gasoline, and then a little bit hotter jet fuel, heating oil, diesel fuel, grease and wax, and then the hottest would make asphalt that you use to pave your roads. And the last non-renewable energy that we talked about was natural gas. And natural gas is a mixture of methane and other gases. Even though it's natural gas doesn't mean it's a renewable resource. It's still non-renewable. Um, and because it forms from the same organisms as oil, and it takes a lot of time for it to replenish itself. So it's not like it's available all the time like a renewable resource would be. So even though it's natural, it's not necessarily what you think of as that alternative green energy. It's still a fossil fuel. So we also talked about how natural gas is transported through pipelines That's one of its advantages. That was easy to transport, and it produces large amounts of energy with less pollution than coal or oil does. But the disadvantage would be that it's highly flammable and could cause an explosion or fire. So that was definitely a disadvantage for natural gas. So now we need to take a look more at renewable energies. Okay, so let's take a look at renewable energy today. And renewable energy is a resource that is either always available or is naturally replaced in a relatively short amount of time. So it doesn't take millions and millions of years for these renewable energies to be replenished. And so we'll talk more about these different types of renewable energies like solar energy. So we know that's for the sun. Then we have wind, geothermal. So we'll talk about that, the ground, and then hydro. What do you think of when you think of hydro? You should think of water. So H2O, right? That's water. So we'll talk about solar, wind, geothermal, and hydro electricities as renewable energies this week. So today we'll talk more about solar and wind energy. And what is solar energy? And this should be a no-brainer for you. You probably know this already, that solar energy is the energy we acquire from the sun. And we use photovoltaic cells as to make up solar panels. And you need to know kind of how they work. And we'll watch a video on how they work, how they put those together after our session today, recorded session, and Mr. Hawkins will play that for you. So that way you can have a visual on how those all go together. Okay, so this is how those photovoltaic cells work. Okay, so these are man-made cells. So they make them, we make them ourselves, they're man-made, and they're made from semiconductors, which are materials that are able to absorb the light energy from the sun. So they're which are materials that are able to absorb light energy. So it's made out of silicone that absorbs the sun's energy it knocks electrons free and it channels the flow of energy all in the same direction. Now the top and the bottom of the silicone has metal contacts. And this is where that solar energy is extracted and stored. So taken out of that cell and stored like electrical energy, because they've had an energy transformation from solar energy to electrical energy. So I'll let you catch up on that. Okay, and if you need any more time, Mr. Hawkins can pause this. So why don't you show them on your hand right now if how much time you need to copy this down. So give him a fist if you're ready to go, one finger up if you have 1 minute left, up to if you need 5 minutes left. Probably nobody would need 5 minutes, but show them with your hands, only with your hands, not with your mouth, how much time you need. So 0 to 5. Okay, so solar energy is also clean and renewable. So we talked about renewable, is that it's replenishing itself in plenty of time, and we know that it's clean, it's not producing any kind of pollution as it's being produced, like it would, like you would if you had fossil fuels being produced. Okay, so let's move on to wind energy. Okay, so wind energy is used to make electricity. So wind is used to make electricity. And we use wind turbines to make this electricity. So let's see how a wind turbine makes electricity, and we'll go through the steps. Then we'll see a video once we're finished with our recorded lesson that you can visualize and actually see how that wind turbine uses the wind to then transform that kinetic energy into electrical energy. So first, we know that the blowing wind spins the blades on a turbine. And this is like a toy pinwheel that maybe you used to get for Easter in your Easter baskets. You see those around a lot during Easter time, and you would blow on the pinwheel and those little blades would spin around. So that's kind of how the wind turbine works. Okay, so I stopped and looked for a picture. Here's like a toy pinwheel for you. So that way you can visualize kind of what that looks like. So it has those blades. When the wind blows, those will spin. That's how a wind turbine kind of works. So when these blades turn, so when the blades turn, the turbine is operating and electricity is generated. Oops. So when the blades turn, the turbine's operating and electricity is generated. And the interesting thing is that, what happens whenever the winds are blowing so hard, like really hard, like you're having a big storm, or what happens if there's a tornado winds? What happens to the turbines then? Well, the turbine has a brake. So the turbine has a brake. So if the winds are blowing too hard, so if the wind blows too hard, the brake can stop the blades from being damaged. Oops. So the brake can stop the blades from being damaged. Okay, so the turbine has a brake. So if the wind blows too hard, the brake can stop the blade from being damaged. So I'll stop so that way you can catch up on that. The blowing wind spins the blades on a turbine like a toy pinwheel. When the blades turn, then the turbine is operating and electricity is generated. The turbine has a brake though, so if the wind blows too hard, the brake can stop the blade from being damaged. So wind turbines, they can be up to 10 stories high. So there it can be huge. So 10 stories high with blades as long as 50 feet. So do wind turbines create pollution? If they are renewable energy, what do you think? Do they create pollution? No, they don't. So wind turbines, that's a source of clean energy. And then how fast does a wind have to blow for electricity to be produced? So it has to be blowing between 12 to 14 miles per hour for electricity to be produced. So if you have a day where you have calm winds, you're probably not going to be collecting a lot of electricity that day. And most of the time, they're going to put these wind turbines in places that there's always a lot of wind being generated. So either offshore, we talked about how you have land and sea breezes earlier when we talked about weather. And also, some of the plains states, like in Texas, we'll watch a video and show some of the wind farms in Texas because they get a lot of wind out there on the prairies. And you should know about prairies. We studied those when we talked about biomes in December and January. So there's lots of places where you could have wind farms, especially along a coastal area because of the land and sea breezes that we talked about when we talked about weather. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to talk more about geothermal energy and hydro energy, and even take a field trip, a virtual field trip to Hoover Dam and watch a few more videos to show you how that works. Right now, though, we're going to finish up. I want you to put your guided notes away in your classroom folders, and Mr. Hawkins is going to play a few different videos and describe those to you, what you'll be seeing, and it's online on Mrs. Williard's online assignment. So if you want to go back and take a look, then you can watch those later as well. But Mr. Hawkins will play those for you. So the expectations when we watch videos is that you are sitting up straight. You're not sleeping. You're not touching other people, and you're really paying attention. So hopefully these will help you have a visual for what it is that we've been talking about and taking notes about. So put these away in your classroom folders and stack them up neatly. We'll have somebody come around to collect those and show him your tiger treats. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.